The story of the Austrian School of Economics begins in the 15th century, when followers of St. Thomas Aquinas sought to explain the full range of human action and social organization. These late scholastics observed the existence of economic law, inexorable forces of cause and effect that operate much like other natural laws. They discovered and explained the laws of supply and demand, the cause of inflation, the operation of foreign exchange rates, and the subjective nature of economic value, which led Joseph Schumpeter to celebrate them as the first real economists. The late scholastics were advocates of property rights and the freedom to contract and trade. They celebrated the contribution of business to society while doggedly opposing taxes, price controls, and regulations that inhibited enterprise. They urged governments to obey ethical strictures against theft and murder, and they lived up to Ludwig von Mises's rule that the first job of an economist is to tell governments what they cannot do. The first general treatise on economics, Essay on the Nature of Commerce, was written in 1730 by Richard Cantillon, a man schooled in the scholastic tradition. He saw economics as an independent area of investigation and explained the formation of prices using the thought experiment. He understood the market as an entrepreneurial process and held to an Austrian theory of money creation that it enters the economy in a step-by-step fashion, disrupting prices along the way. Cantillon was followed by Anne Robert Jacques Turgot, the pro-market French aristocrat and finance minister under the Ancien regime. His economic writings were few but profound. His paper, Value and Money, spelled out the origins of money and the nature of economic choice, that it reflects the subjective rankings of an individual's preferences. Turgot solved the famous diamond water paradox that baffled later classical economists, articulated the law of diminishing returns, and criticized usury laws, a sticking point with the late scholastics. He favored a classical liberal approach to economic policy, recommending a repeal of all special privileges granted to government-connected industries. Turgot was the intellectual father of a long line of great French economists of the 18th and 19th century, most prominently Jean-Baptiste Say and Claude Frédéric Bastiat. Say was the first economist to think deeply about economic method. He realized that economics is not about the amassing of data, but rather about the verbal elucidation of universal facts. For example, wants are unlimited, means are scarce, and their logical implications. Say discovered the productivity theory of resource pricing, the role of capital in the division of labor, and says law there can never be sustained overproduction or underconsumption on the free market if prices are allowed to adjust. He was a defender of laissez-faire and the Industrial Revolution, as was Bastiat. As a free market journalist, Bastiat also argued that non-material services are subject to the same economic laws as material goods. In one of his many economic allegories, Bastiat spelled out the broken window fallacy, later popularized by Henry Hazlitt. Despite the theoretical sophistication of this developing pre-Austrian tradition, the British school of the late 18th and early 19th centuries won the day, mostly for political reasons. This British tradition, based on the objective cost and labor productivity theory of value, ultimately led to the rise of the Marxist doctrine of capitalist exploitation. The dominant British tradition received its first serious challenge in many years when Carl Menger's Principles of Economics was published in 1871. Menger, the founder of the Austrian school proper, resurrected the scholastic French approach to economics and put it on firmer ground. Menger's Principles of Economics marked a turning point in economic theory, introducing a new way of thinking about the nature of economic value. Menger rejected the labor theory of value and argued that economic value was subjective, determined by individual preferences and choices. He believed that goods and services had value only because people desired them and were willing to pay for them. Menger's ideas sparked a revolution in economic thought and laid the foundation for the Austrian School of Economics. This school emphasized the importance of individual action and choice in economic decision-making, and rejected the idea of a social, or collective, approach to economics. Austrian economists argued that the market process was a spontaneous and decentralized order, driven by the actions and choices of individual entrepreneurs and consumers. Despite its early success, the Austrian school faced criticism and opposition from other schools of economic thought, particularly from the neoclassical and Keynesian schools. However, the Austrian school continued to grow and develop, with notable economists such as Ludwig von Mises and Friedrich Hayek advancing its theories and principles. Today, the Austrian school remains a significant force in economic thought, particularly in the areas of entrepreneurship, business cycle theory, and the study of markets and prices. Its emphasis on individual action and choice, and its rejection of centralized economic planning and intervention, continue to influence economic debates and policy discussions. Subscribe Libertarian Facts.